Did you know that more than 15% of the world population is disabled? Collaborative economy, virtual reality, and the Internet of Things improved travel experience. However, according to the European Network for Accessible Tourism, 46% of disabled people in the EU don't travel at all. And according to an Amadeus research, 86% of those who do would wish to travel more if travel was made more accessible to them. Add to this the needs of a steadily aging population with increasing accessibility requirements, and you see the potential of accessible travel tourism. Well, Amadeus has decided to look into this area more closely, so they started a research in collaboration with ONCE Foundation. To give us a more in-depth insight into this subject, it is a real pleasure to introduce the Head of Strategic Research at Corporate Strategy in Amadeus. Let's welcome Mónica Clemente. Welcome.
Okay, good morning, everyone. The lights are very blinding. Okay, so I'm here from Amadeus, and I want to talk to you about a very exciting and very engaging voyage that we started some months ago in our company. But before I actually talk about this voyage, I would like to briefly introduce the company to you, for those of you who don't know Amadeus. Amadeus is one of the key players in the travel industry, making travel happen. And I want to give you three clear examples on how we do that. First, let's think about when you are at home planning your next trip, you doing your search, your booking, or you are using a travel agent to do so. Amadeus is probably going to be the player behind all this process. Also, when you fly, when you take an airline, all the operations that go behind that, the IT systems, probably Amadeus is going to be in some of these processes. And finally, another example, on the airports, when you have to do the check-in, probably the check-in systems behind are going to be also supported by Amadeus. So you can see that Amadeus is playing a very critical role in different areas related to travel. You also know, probably, that travel is strongly linked to technology and to innovation. And obviously, Amadeus is very aware of this. And for that reason, we are investing over 500 million euros on innovation on a yearly basis. For us, innovation is critical, but innovation has to have a reason. It's not innovation for the sake of innovating. So what does innovation mean? For us, innovation is about satisfying unmet customer needs. And once we have identified these unmet customer needs, what we do is we focus on specific projects and we deliver value. And by value, what we mean is a benefit to our industry, to the travel industry, and to consumers. As the presenter was saying before, in this area of innovation, just yesterday we have launched our white paper on accessibility. It's called Voyage of Discovery. And one of the key highlights of this white paper is the fact that accessible travel is still a way to go. The experience of people with accessibility needs are still not fully met. So this means that this is clearly an area of customer needs not met, and therefore an opportunity for business and innovation. So let me talk to you about this voyage of discovery and what accessibility means. As it was mentioned just now, did you know that 15% of the global population has some sort of accessibility need due to disability? I think this is a quite impressive figure. On the top of that, it's important to think about accessibility in the global picture and what accessibility needs. And for that, there is a very important reference in the area of accessibility that is Professor Darcy. Professor Darcy was talking about accessibility as the way for people with different type of requirements, visual, cognitive, hearing, mobility, to be able to operate in an independent way, and also the way that they can operate independently is by the provision of products and services that are universally designed. And I think it is important to keep these two concepts into account, the concept of universal design and the relevance of these people wanting to be independent at the time that they do their travel. But when we talk about accessibility and the segment that this represents, accessibility is about people with disabilities, but it's also about families, families traveling with babies, with trolleys. It's about pregnant women, and it's also about people in prams. It's a very broad segment. And actually, when we think about accessibility, most of us will be impacted at some point in our life on accessibility need. So don't think that this is something that is impacting other people. It will impact you, probably. Another important element when we talk about accessibility is the size and the evolution. And what I mean by this is that the projections are that by 2050, over 20% of the global population will be 65 years or older. So obviously, this represents a growing segment. And what is also important is that these people will be eager to travel and have the spending power to do so. Another important element is, okay, we are talking about segment, we are talking about figures, we are talking about people, the human factor, but what about business opportunity? Business opportunity is also very meaningful in terms of accessibility, as we know that only taking the US and the European Union, the travel accessible and entertainment market represents a volume of over $70 billion. So this is quite an impressive figure. On the top of that, our research shows that if accessibility barriers were removed, people with accessibility needs will increase their travel budget by 34%. So people, but also a relevant business opportunity. On top of that, we have to take into account legislation. What is happening from the institutions, from the governments? The governments are heavily promoting accessibility and promoting all the initiatives related to this concept. What this means, at the end of the day, is that the people will be increasingly aware of this right and will be expecting accessibility as part of the standard offer. As I was saying before, in this voyage of discovery, one of the most striking elements is the satisfaction score that respondents gave us in relation to the accessibility conditions on the trip. The rating that we got is 6.24, and this rating is based on online survey made to more than 700 people, almost 800, in the European Union, in US, and India. And as you can see for the figures, it's not only the overall rating that gets relatively low scores, it's all the elements in the travel chain that have a clear area for improvement, from the moment that the people is planning their trip to the moment they arrive at destination. So what can we do about this? For us, in Amadeus, it's very important, especially the part related to the planning of the travel, the booking, what happens at home. And in that specific case, we are seeing a very clear area for improvement with only 5.9 out of 10 in terms of satisfaction with the overall performance of the travel websites. What is important about this as well is the fact that most of the travelers with accessible needs would like to arrange as much as possible the process in an online fashion. But this represents a clear challenge to them, as 53% of these people will need some kind of support to finalize their booking. In summary, our research has identified two key elements critical at the time of defining an accessible travel experience. The first one, has to do with a personal travel experience at all stages of travel. And here we have three important items to take into account. One is about information. The information that these people need is an information that has to be contextualized, one-to-one, relevant. It has to be on the point, at the spot. And also what is important is that this information has to be communicated in an efficient manner. The second important point is about industry standards. And this is really a critical element for these people challenging with these people, and that is a clear challenge in the sense that when they have to do a booking, there are no universal standards. So what this means is that when they have to book a hotel, sometimes they have to call hotels to ensure that even if they say they are accessible, they really meet their accessible requirements that they really need. So you can imagine how challenging it can be for these people to compare prices and offers across different providers. The third item in relation to a personalized experience has to do with service. Service is critical, and the problem with service is that this service has to be properly skilled and trained. You have to form the people so that they really adapt their services to the specific requirements to the people with different kinds of profiles and different kinds of needs. So this is the key element, personalized experience, and the second critical element is technology. As I have been mentioning, innovation and technology are critical elements, and obviously, in this case, are even more important. We are seeing important enhancements in the area of technology and in the area of accessible travel, having to do with online, having to do with mobile devices, but we also know that there is a very promising future ahead, thinking about other possibilities and thinking about new developments. For example, think about wearables, think about tracking systems, think about artificial intelligence, think about voice recognition. The possibilities are really endless. I would like to give a few examples of companies that have already seized the opportunity and are looking into the accessibility space. Expedia is one of them. Expedia is an online travel agency, and what they have done is they have integrated the concept of universal design from the very beginning of their product cycle, which means is that they are taking into account the concept of universal design from the moment that they design the product, from the moment that they refine this definition, they deploy it, they release it, and they maintain it. And on the top of that, they have a strong champion network on accessibility that is supporting all this process. The second good practice I would like to talk to you about is about Japanese Airlines. Japanese Airlines are a very interesting case because in this specific case, they are extremely concerned about people with accessibility needs. And one of the most important reasons for that is that over 25% of the population in Japan are senior citizens. So obviously, this is an important customer segment for them. And what they are doing on top of designing products and services that are universally designed is they have developed a very ambitious training program so that their staff are able to approach these customers in the most adequate fashion. The last example I want to give in terms of big companies on the accessibility space related to travel is Scandi Hotels. Scandi Hotels is a hotel chain that have embedded technology with accessibility. And some examples of this is hearing loops at the reception desk, vibrating fire alarms, wake-up calls, check out smartphones. So these are some of the examples. Also, what they have done is they were the first hotel chain to develop an online training program for their staff. So these are three big companies that are already moving forward in the area of accessibility. But it's not only about big companies. There are other smaller players or even startups that are working in this area. For example, let's talk about Situm. Situm, maybe some of you know, this is a Spanish startup. They have developed a navigation system to help the people to find their way around inside buildings. Okay, so many different ideas, many different type of companies in terms of size. I'm sure that by now you are thinking about ideas, products, or services that can be developed in the accessibility space. If that is, and thinking about how can you turn this out into a viable business model. If that is the case, I would like to invite you to join our Amadeus Ventures program. Amadeus Venture was launched 3 years ago with the idea of investing on early stage startups. We have global coverage, and we have a focus on travel. Just to give you 3 key indicators that show our performance, we have assessed more than 1,000 companies. We have introduced over 150 startups into the business, and we have invested on companies of an overall valuation of around $1 billion. In summary, I would like to, I'm almost closing my presentation. So in summary, I think it's very important to take into account 3 key elements from my presentation today. The first important point has to do with the relevance of accessibility and the fact that this is a growing segment. Accessibility is here to stay, as this represents an increasing demand of the population. Also, what this implies is that more and more people will expect to be offered accessible services as part of the standard offer. Another important remark or food for thought is in terms of in terms of what is the most important demand for this customer segment, and it's about being able to be free and autonomous. It is that they want to be independent and make their own choices and not to be supported, to be able to make their own decisions on their own. At the end of the day, what these travelers want is to become empowered travelers. And my last point is about the role that Amadeus can play here. In Amadeus, we are committed to accessibility, but obviously, we cannot do this on our own. We need, in order for accessibility to succeed, there is a need for collaboration of public, private institutions, as well as customers, to be able to achieve this final goal of an accessible and inclusive travel for all. So, I would like to challenge all of you in the audience to think about accessibility, to think about what means accessibility in your products, in your daily life, in solutions, because at the end of the day, as I have said before, this is something that is impacted or will impact all of you, or most of you, at some point of your life. Help us to think about accessibility differently. Entrepreneurs, come to us and help us to define the next generation of accessible solutions in the travel industry, in your marketplace, in Internet of Things. Accessibility is the right thing to do, but it also is a very sound business opportunities. Engage with us. We are Amadeus. Okay, this is a very nice quote. I think we are kind of running out of time, so. And I would like to leave with this very nice video. Thank you. The sound is not working. Well, it's good that it's accessible so you can read it.
Think of a business trip to meet an important client.
An open field with rolling hills.
The possibilities are endless. Or are they?
A hand moves across a braille sign.
Today, over 1 billion people continue to face travel barriers.
A person in a wheelchair is looking at a lake. Then, a person walks with a white cane. A hand presses an automatic door opener. Then, a bus with a ramp gives access to a wheelchair user. Then, a close-up shows hands typing on a laptop.
We all want the freedom to plan, search, book and travel independently.
Glass glass doors open to a sea view at sunset.
At Amadeus, we're committed to making this a reality.
A woman uses a smartphone at an airport. A businessman types on a tablet on a train. Then a robotic hand moves.
Technology is now providing a high degree of personalization.
Virtual reality glasses reveal a hotel room.
But this study from Amadeus shows we still have a long way to go.
A plane takes off. A montage of attractive destinations. Then a backpacker walks along the road. Traffic moves across a city bridge.
Together with our industry partners, we want to build an inclusive and accessible travel industry.
A city from above. Then a pregnant woman on a beach at sunrise. Then a woman in a wheelchair raises her arms. Then a hot air balloon floats above Buddhist temples.
Making travel possible for everyone. For further information, visit amadeus.com.
Thank you.